Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, "Now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters who accuses them before our God day and night has been hurled down. They triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimonies. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death." I was raised in church since the age of 3 when I asked Jesus into my heart right after my mother had given me a spanking. My mother had recently committed her life to God, and she began to take my sister and I to church each week and also to Bible studies as well. As early as I could remember, I had sensed that God had something special he wanted to do with my life. This began to build faith in me. When I was 8 years old, my father divorced my mother. This was a painful time for my family, and I thought it was my fault because my father was not a Christian and my mother was. And one night, a few days before he announced he was leaving my mom, I'd asked my dad to read the Bible to me, and he said no. A few days later, my dad separated from my mom and later divorced her. And because of their religious differences, this was a really painful time for me. And the enemy decided he wasn't done to try to wreak havoc in my life. At age 9, I was abused by a babysitter in a way that awakened things in me that had no business being awakened in a little girl. The impact of this and subsequent events like it brought years of confusion, guilt, shame, ambivalence, a sense of powerlessness, and fear. This brought an incredible amount of damage to my own life and resulted in hurting my family as a whole. I was determined never to let this happen again, and I seized control of my life. You see, I figured no one else would protect me, so I had to protect myself. I began to build walls around my heart so people could not hurt me again. I also began to outwardly change the way I dressed and acted towards others. A little more tougher, a little more masculine, whatever. This event fed the fear and lack of trust of men that had started when my father divorced my mom. Now, as a family, we were actively involved in church, but at school, I was a totally different person. When I was 12 years old, though, finally I was tired of living this kind of two-faced life. And I honestly, because of the way I lived at school and the way I acted at church, I realized, I don't know, if I die, am I even going to go to heaven? I was kind of two-faced. And so when I was 12 years old, I prayed, said, "Lord, would you be my Savior?" I rededicated my heart to the Lord. But even though I had done this, I still had so much pain in my life, and I didn't know what to do about it. Being raised in a single-parent home, our finances were always tight and constantly an issue. And I felt a lot of responsibility for my family. And my younger sister was, 4 years younger than me. My mom really depended on me for help and making decisions and running around the household and things. And I was often the one around the house the most because mom had to work. I was a person that was very reliable. Life continued on in my junior high school years with normal ebbs and flows. I chose to take advantage of opportunities to serve in various ministry teams and training in high school. I took an opportunity to go on my first missions trip when I was in high school. And I watched God do some amazing things, especially in regards to his provision. While we were on the trip, I chose to be teachable. I chose to be available to what God might want to do through me. And I watched God provide for my family, and I became more and more full of faith, or faithful, if you will. In order to help my family, and because it was cheaper, I lived at home my first 2 years of college. When I got my AA degree, I went to my junior year of college, away from home at Central Washington University. And by God's grace and through the counsel of some really good friends, God let me know that being in control of my life was not my place, but rather he wanted to be in control. And I had to wrestle with a lot of the questions that I had regarding my own faith and my trust in God. I asked God questions like, where were you when I was being hurt? Why didn't you protect me? I was innocent and I didn't deserve it. I even went to church. Why did you let him hurt me? Through all my questions, God was there. And through it all, he revealed his love for me in a way that brought me closer to him. He lovingly revealed that he is sovereign and he is good. I slowly began to respond to God's urgings for me to trust him and let people into my life to help me. God began the painful but gentle process of healing my wounded heart, enabling me to love and trust people again, and also to begin tearing down the walls I had built between myself and other people. As a result, by God's grace, I am a totally different person than I was between the ages of 9 and 22. Summer after my first year in college, I went on a missions trip to Israel. Just so you know, side note, before I went to Israel, I had some very strong political feelings and opinions regarding Israel and the Palestinian-Israeli issue. But based on my experience there, God began to undo some of my thoughts, and I was encouraged to learn from the people group that I had encountered. I was teachable. It was there that I finally received the call that God had given me to campus missions. I was available. I had wanted to be a high school history teacher, and I was scared that if I was a campus pastor, campus missionary, that I would be poor like I had been growing up. I wanted a stable life, but God broke through my fears and miraculously provided for me to go to Israel in the first place and reminded me of his provision. He is faithful, and my faith was full in him. I trusted that he was going to be able to take care of me for the rest of my life. On return to my campus, I met with my campus pastor and told him what I wanted to do, and I began the formal process of application to become a Chi Alpha campus worker and all that entailed. It led me to a year-long internship in Illinois and then to Portland State University, where I served as an associate and then later as director. Why? Because I was found reliable as I worked with both international and American students. And in the summers, I would often be part of or lead teams overseas to expand their vision of life and ministry and giving and prayer. 2005, on my third trip into the Middle East, God spoke to me to go there and give 2 to 3 years. Now, just so you know, my dad and my stepmother are not followers of Jesus. And I still see my father as my authority, and it's God's sovereignty over his life. So honestly, I asked my dad before I went and moved overseas if I could have his blessing, even though he probably didn't understand that terminology. He said that he wanted me to be happy, and if that's what it meant, that I could go. And I took that as good enough. After arriving on the field, it took me a year to come to the conclusion that I should give my life to this work in the Arab world as long as God allows me. He used a rejection letter for a master's program because I'd applied. I was trying to figure out a way to stay there long term. I thought if I could be a university professor, that would give me access into the country long term. But he used this rejection letter to solidify my call. I experienced a deep sorrow that perhaps I wasn't supposed to be in this country and that I might have to return to the States. And yet God's sovereignty and goodness was at work in my life. Thankfully, a few days later, God opened up another door for a ministry platform and an opportunity to be part of a church planting team there in the Middle East. in between confirming that I wanted to be part of a church planting team in 2010 and that many things have happened, like the development of Live Dead Arab World. I was committed to be part of a team when I left the field in 2012 to go through the full appointment process. But by the time I landed again in 2014 of March, I was part of a training team for church planters. My specific roles have changed over time, but two things drive me. The first is mentoring and discipling believers to go further with God and do more for God than I ever could. And secondly, to walk in a relationship with non-believers in order to bring them closer to the person of Jesus, that they may also become his disciples and worshipers. Honestly, I know I can do these things anywhere on the planet, but God's called me to do them in the Arab world. When I look at my life in high school and I look at college and beyond, I see a pattern of me living my life with walking through doors of opportunity that he opened. After I allowed God to heal my brokenness, and friends, I cannot emphasize enough, you need to let God heal the broken places. Friends, the mission field is challenging enough, and it will raise up any and all insecurities you might have. So you want to go as whole and complete, healthy as you can going to the field. I'm so grateful that God helped me to quit protecting myself, and I chose to live life open, experiencing, yes, pain, but also deep and great joy. I allowed him to change my heart and completely change the direction of my service, even when it didn't make complete sense in my own head. After all, when I look at God's sense of humor, I marvel at it. Why would God call someone like me, with a past like mine, with a history like mine, to go as a blonde or blondish, there's a little gray now, single, female, to serve in the Arab world that's defined by its male-dominated hierarchical type society? God's got a sense of humor. I have learned that God does not always call the equipped, but he equips the called. He calls those who are reliable, those who are available, those who are faithful, and those who are teachable. I call this building your raft. This is a little bit of what Steve talked about last night. He talked about being fat. I've just kind of added the reliable in there too. But this is foundational to stay on the crazy, unpredictable ocean of life. But keep in mind, you also need two other things on this raft. You need a deep, unshakable understanding of God's sovereignty. He has all control, all power. He has it all. That's like the sail of the raft. But also you need to understand the rudder. That is the fact that God is good. It doesn't always make sense. Sometimes it feels like God's sovereignty and God's goodness collide with each other. And we have to wrestle with some of that stuff. But friends, if you can grasp a hold of these things, be faithful, be reliable, be teachable, God's going to help you successfully deploy.